more life happens and you get busy and work and kids come along, and there's different things that can just kind of cause you to drift apart. But we need to make sure that we don't let that happen, or if we notice it, how do we get it back?
And it's you and me, babe, whatever comes. Knowing bigger hands are holding ours, and the greatest days are ahead of us. Growing in love, learning to be a better us.
Welcome to A Better Us. We're so glad you're here.
Something we hear a lot from struggling couples is we feel like we've drifted apart.
Right.
It's usually not something intentional that you're doing, but there is something intentional you can do about it.
In today's Loveology segment, Dr. Johnny Parker shares some wisdom about drift in marriage. And then the guys of A Better Us are in the workshop to build on the topic a little more.
I see how you did that. Also, Bill and Pam Farrel suggest a great parenting idea, and they call it putting your trademark on your kids.
You'll have to stay tuned to discover just what that means.
Yeah.
And of course, our kitchen couples will have a lot to say about it.
That's all coming up, so don't miss a minute.
So, Johnny, we have a question that's come in here, and it's about drift. And I've heard you speak about this, and you teach, you write. What happens? What's going on when a couple says it just feels like we're drifting apart? Speak to it, would you?
Yeah, couples have to be really intentional about staying centered. Drift does happen, and so in order to really be aware of that drift, I find that couples really want to be intentional about having core values, and in research around this, I teach positive psychology at Johns Hopkins, and the research shows in leadership literature that when couples have core values and they're intentional about their core values, their impact is over 110% greater. I mean, that's what it shows in leadership, but that's also transferable to couples.
So when a couple is drifting apart, what you're saying is revisit the core values the two of you share. I often think of core values like concentric circles. And there's things that we value out here that maybe we're different on, what time you go to bed or what TV shows you like or whatever, whatever the real peripheral stuff of life is.
Yeah.
But you're talking about the core stuff, really deep in your religious faith, for example, your philosophy of living, those kinds of things. Tell us how that works.
Yeah, and so one of the practical ways that I coach couples to do this, and leaders as well, take your last name, so whatever your last name may be, form an acrostic, or first or last name, form an acrostic around that, and then, like, for example, ours is Parker, so we'll walk through that, and P, pleasing God, A, accepting one another, R, respect, K, keeping short accounts, E, encouraging, and R, renewal, and S is service. And so we tell couples, hey, once a week, you want to have a conversation around the fireplace over a latte and talk about who we are and what we want, why we want it, and have a conversation about how we're showing up with our core values.
That's a clever thing. It's kind of a new way of getting to your mission as a couple. Sometimes we talk about having a marriage mission statement for us. And I love the practical way of taking your last name and thinking through how can we remember the core values that we have. That's great. So just to sum up, you're saying to avoid drift in marriage, you got to focus on the values that matter most. And on top of it, you've given us a super practical way of making that happen. Johnny, thanks so much.
Thanks, Les.
All right, welcome to the workshop, and we are here with just the guys of A Better Us. Now, the girls do their thing called Just Us Girls, and we get to hang out once in a while, just us guys, and we're doing it today in the workshop. It's a good spot.
I think they did theirs at like poolside or in the backyard or something that showing that they like to relax, but we like to get work done, right?
Hey, we get work done in the workshop. Home improvement we're talking about.
Yes.
And your family life, marriage, and giving some tools maybe to help along the way.
I think in essence that we probably have more work to do when they're relaxing because they are a little bit ahead of us.
That's right. We've got the work to do. We've got to sand off some of our rough edges, I think so. But teaching that we just heard there from Johnny Parker. It's challenging for us because drift happens. Every marriage, you know, it starts out, you know, so strong, and you're together, and you're one, and you're in the honeymoon phase, and then, you know, more of life happens, and you get busy, and work and kids come along, and responsibility piles on, and there's different things that can just kind of cause you to drift apart. But we need to make sure that we don't let that happen, or if we notice it, how do we get it back? And so some good thoughts there.
Yeah, I loved the last name acrostic. Put values in that, so you can remember them easily. I loved that, because once we kind of define our values, then we need to create disciplines around them, so that we can have this outcome that becomes intentional, something we did together, intentional over being accidental. It's something that we can be proud of, something that we actually worked together towards, and it brings us back to that we choose what matters most. We choose these values that we're prioritizing together, and I really liked it. So Kara and I are going to do that with the last name values, and I don't know if it'll go in the kitchen, but somewhere we can see it.
Look forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
He might steal it from you. You have the same last name.
Same last name. Yeah, no, hey, it's got to be different.
I'll let you do the work.
It's got to be.
You're in the workshop for that one.
I really love the idea of the last name as well. You know, when we talk about this, we talk about it almost as a foregone conclusion. I haven't felt a lot of drift in our marriage, though, but we have done some things from the beginning. Certainly, there are times where you wish you had more family time, and she writes me a letter, right? When she kind of lets me know when there's a handwritten letter on the pillow. Yes. Pillow 12.
That'll get that'll get your attention right there.
Yes. So, and so she'll give me a little handwritten letter when things are a little bit out of rhythm, but I wouldn't say as far as drift, right? But because we have put things in place. So we actually give our marriage a grade from 1 to 10 every anniversary. And that's something that we've done since our very first anniversary. And an anniversary, you don't want to be mad, right?
No.
So it's, you easily forgive yourselves, right, on that day, right? But we go out to a dinner and we do that, and then there's other things. So
then in that, because I'm curious about that, because if the number maybe isn't as high, close to 10 as you think it should be,
right,
then I guess you have to figure out, okay, what steps, what values, core values maybe do we have to address to get it closer to where we think it needs to be.
So in fact, further in that conversation, we talk about what we like, what we didn't like. We talk about what we could do better, what we want more of, what we could use less of, right? So we talked to all of those things. And then we moved on to talking about each one of our kids, right? As well as they began to grow. And so we had that conversation. And then our anniversaries in June, and then we naturally have that sort of same, not as detailed, more personal and inspirational, but we do the same thing in January. So kind of 6 months sort of apart, right. But we have other things that we built in, especially when our kids were younger, because we are so busy. We traveled 4 weeks a year, right? 2 weeks was in Florida with our family, and then 2 weeks was somewhere else, so that we had time just dedicate. So we had a busy life, but we were able to kind of do some other things because of this busyness, to build those different things in life to settle us and to ground us.
Help avoid that drift. That's good. That's good.
I like where he said about kind of a weekly readdressing of it. And I was kind of thinking of that as maybe it could be even on a date night, a weekly date night. I've heard somewhere before that making sure you have a weekly date night is cheaper than hiring a divorce lawyer. Okay. Like whatever you're going to spend on date nights, like add it all up, it's still going to be cheaper than a divorce lawyer. So you make sure you have that time to kind of refocus, call it back in. Actually, I was thinking it's kind of like a huddle, right? Because on a football team, I know we're doing the workshop thing and not the football thing, but it's kind of like a huddle. On a football team, everyone's got their job, and they can be out thinking about their job. Okay, my job is to get that guy or to stay on him or whatever. But you have a huddle for a second, and it's like you take from your individual things you're all doing, and you bring it back in, and you refocus on the main. This is the main mission of what we're doing right here. So I think that's what it's like. You're calling back to your core values and your core mission, and it's like a reset. And it's like no matter what we're all doing. At the core, it's go team. It's go team, and we're a team as a couple in a marriage or on a football team. So and also the other thing that date night does is it kind of like reminds you of why you got married in the first place. Because when drifts can happen, you can get busy in life, you can get busy doing this and that and the other thing, and you come back together and you try and kind of rekindle that a little bit of that spark that you had, and you see your spouse, in different terms, not as we're doing the work of life together, but we're out enjoying life together, and get that little bit of glimpse of reminder of why you said I do in the first place. But yeah, that weekly calling back, that huddle to your core values and what's I know we're running and we're doing all this, but this is what it's about. This is what we're about at the core. This is why we're doing all these things, and go team.
Right. If we could expound on that.
Yeah, because you know football way better than me. I'm a new football fan.
So there are times where things are more crazy and you can't huddle, right?
Right.
They call it the hurry up. And so they actually call the plays, the signals, the directions at the line of scrimmage, right? And so, I think when we have a really mature relationship, even when things get busy, right, we can still call out the instructions. We can still make the adjustments, even when we're busy and on the run, right? And it actually can be some of our most productive times during our relationship.
Good. Call the audible at the line of scrimmage.
All the
I like
odds.
it.
There you go. Yeah.
But there are so many, I guess to use the drift analogy, so many currents out there that are trying to drag us one way or another. And when a boat is in the currents, it'll just keep drawing you away. And if there's the two boats, it'll go farther and farther apart. But if you have an anchor, you tether together. And I think you mentioned this in a previous program. You tether your boats together, and then you put an anchor, and the anchor could be the core values. It could be your faith in God. I think one of the greatest things that we can all have is to develop our spiritual life together and to pray together, to have a time, whether it's daily or it's just a regular time where you can get together as a couple, and just there's some great couples devotionals out there. That's an anchoring time right there, because God is the ultimate anchor. That when you talk about core values, like if your core, if He is at the core of your life, that is the best anchor to ever have. Yeah. Because some people who allow the drift to go apart, and they get busy with the life, with the work, with the kids, and by the time they have an empty nest, they have an empty marriage that they find too. Yeah. And so it's so important to refocus, to have that core, to have spiritual life together.
To tap into a source that is eternal. To tap into a love that is eternal. That's wisdom right there.
Absolutely. Avoiding drift in marriage, that's a good thing. And so there's some good tools there from the workshop here for you today. Thanks, guys. It's been good in the workshop. Don't go away. More Better Us to come.
So when you fall in love, it often leads to having these little treasures we call children. And when you have kids, you want to invest in their lives, and Pam and I like to say you want to put your trademark on your children.
For more marriage encouragement, follow A Better Us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
And subscribe for your free weekly marriage moment email at abetterus.tv.
So when you fall in love, it often leads to having these little treasures we call children. And when you have kids, you want to invest in their lives, and Pam and I like to say you want to put your trademark on your children.
TM. And you want to do that because the Psalm says,
it says one generation will commend your works to another. So it's natural for us to pass on to the next generation what we have learned.
So how do you do that? What is a trademark on your kids? So the T stands for traditions. Those are things you do year after year after year. They're built into your family system.
And you want to look for traditions that you believe in and that have meaning to you.
For example, we always bless our kids every Christmas. That means that we put our hands on them, we pray over them, and we affirm who we see God creating them to become. We bring out and we call out the best, that God-given potential.
And then on our kids' birthdays, we raised 3 sons. So every year on their birthday, they got to choose wherever they wanted to go for dinner. Because, food and boys, those are big priorities with one another. So we let them have those opportunities. And then we have always had a habit of praying over meals, and we would rotate having the kids pray along with us.
So those are traditions that you build into your family system that reflect your values. Then memories, that's the M of trademark. And memories are those, well, once in a while kind of things. For example, maybe the yearly father-son trip that Bill took, or the rite of passage that we do when our kids are about 18 years old.
Right, and the difference between those, the father-son trips were informal trips to build character. So I would take the kids to some place where you couldn't plug anything in and a place where mom would be uncomfortable. And then while we were there, we would have all of the kids take turns praying over meals, and we would have the kids take turns. What did God teach you in this last year that you would like to share with the rest of us? And it was all informal, and it was built around boating and fishing and rock climbing and things that boys like to do.
Where another one, the rite of passage, that happened when they're anywhere from between 18 and 21. And we wanted it to connect up to the personality of that child. For example, our oldest son, Brock, was a quarterback. So we invited all of his mentors, his coaches, to walk the field with him and share what it meant to be a man and compliment and call out the godly male characteristics and how you're going to forge forward in life.
And our middle son, his truck was really important to him, so we went to an indoor racetrack. And our youngest son loved mountain climbing, so we did a climb into manhood. And the point is, we wanted to give them a memory that would linger for their life and remind them of what's important. So take time to put your trademark on your kids.
We are in the kitchen now with our kitchen couples. Always great to have Eric and Kara here with us, and Mike and Diane.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is good stuff. Now, with A Better Us, usually the us is just talking about the marriage relationship only, but we've expanded the us in this segment because we're talking about us as a family, and how do we, trademark. That's kind of was a neat thing Bill and Pam had. TM. Traditions and memories.
I like that too.
And so what can we do to kind of do something like that?
In our home, in my home growing up, I grew up in a military household where we moved every couple of years. And so my parents and I, we really didn't have that many traditions. And so when we got married and started to have children, I really wanted to be deliberate about creating family traditions because I wanted my kids to have that. And so one of the things we did, and Eric is here, he can testify that we did this, is every night at dinner time, everyone had their own day. So we had 3 kids. So the oldest, I think Andrea was Monday, Adam was Tuesday, Eric was Wednesday. And so they each had their own night of the week where it was their turn we always had a candle in the middle of the table when we had dinner. So they would light the candle, which was a big deal to a child to light the candle.
It was a cool candle, though.
It was a cool candle.
It changed the wax changed colors as it went down.
It dripped
Anyways,
down, yeah.
Sorry.
I'm glad you remember that.
We went through a lot of those type of candles.
We sure did. But anyway, and so that child got to light the candle, got to pray over the meal. They got to tell their day first. So everyone, we always went around the table and telling about our day, highlights of our day, so that the child got to tell their day first.
We also had to unload the dishwasher that day too.
That was their day for unloading the dishwasher too. That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. But then, and they also, we always liked like the Far Side comics, so they got to read the Far Side comic of the day first, and then pass it around the table, and everybody got to read. But anyway,
for a little laugh.
Just little traditions that you establish in your home that you look look forward to, the kids look forward to, and you know that this is our family and this is what we do. And I think it's important. Did you guys have traditions?
Well, one of the things that we did, because the intensity of the schedule during a season, right? It was a lot of times it's 7 days a week that you have to go in. And so we tried to protect the other 6 months, right? And so we took 4 weeks away. Right, so 2 weeks during the holiday season, right, and 2 weeks during their March break, and those 4 weeks a year, it'd just be us, right? So we're together, and we had some wonderful trips in some great places, and really thankful to be able to do that, right? And that could look very different in a different home, right? But for us, that's what worked, and I always, when we talk about that trademark, I always wanted to allow them to create their own trademark, not just do what mom and dad does, right? And so as it turned out, right, one of the wonderful things that we did together, and sometimes mom would come and sometimes not, right, is that we take road trips. I love to drive, and so get out on the road, and we'd go, and as it turns out, the trademark is, well, we end up going to a bunch of games. Yes. So,
and that's why Mom didn't come.
Now, Mike, you had 3 daughters.
Yes, that's the 3 daughters.
Well, he was the one driving the car. So they're going to a football game.
So they turned out to enjoy the same thing. So we tried to make it theirs, and it ended up being theirs, and they're still like that today. But we really worked hard to try to give them their own impression, right, and let them make their own impression. And it turns out that sport is one of those things they really enjoy.
Yeah, the road trips was a big thing for us because they love. Mom didn't like the road trip so much, but I went along, because they all loved it. To this day, if he says,
you didn't like shopping in New York City?
Okay. Well, maybe some of the road trips I like. Some were better than others. Let's just be clear. But they really enjoyed it to this day. Like if he says let's go, they're like, where are we going? Let's go. Right? So it doesn't matter. And every year for their 16th birthday, the thing we loved to do also was let them choose where they wanted to go for their birthday. So one would say, okay, well, we're going to New York City. Okay, we're going to New York City. And the other one, no, I just want to have a big party. Okay, well, we'll have a party. So we try to include them in the decision-making process so that they would have a say as well. So,
someone very early on, he was actually a team chaplain, said to me, with your kids, as they were identifying, you want to make memories, right? And so that was a thoughtful part of our process and our family and the kids growing up and trying to do that. So they had some really interesting birthday parties and different things, but trying to make memories, I think, is one of the things that I love most about this.
The traditions.
Yes. I was just going to say, I feel like one trademark that we are continuing is Eric and I both grew up saying a prayer at night. Eric's consisted of to grow up to be a man of God.
Yes.
And he still remembers it to this day.
Word for
I can recite it.
In fact, at your wedding reception, you even mentioned that.
Yes.
How much that meant to you, that exact prayer that we prayed over.
Yeah, it's a tradition and it's a good memory as well.
Yeah, seriously.
I really see the importance of this growing up. As you said, I can remember like sometimes they're quirky and sometimes it's just like quirky Christmas traditions. Like we always had to watch It's a Wonderful Life, Christmas night, Christmas Eve, and everything, or the camping trips that we'd take, the father, son, cousin camping trips that we'd take, and
every year.
Yeah, every year, and it was meaningful. And I would look forward to them. And now that we have our own kids, and they are right now they're only 1 and 2, but I look forward to those type of traditions and memories that we're gonna make with our kids.
And I also like what Pam did with her sons. One of them was a quarterback, and so they had the coaches come in and speak life into their son. I think it's important for us to speak truth into our children and call out things that they might not see, because our kids can get so lost in this world and who they are. And if we're intentional with who's surrounding them to speak life into them, I think we could build up a generation who would know who they are, can stand firm, because people, instead of bringing them down, are calling them out into who they are and encouraging them to be. And I just want to encourage parents who maybe when their kids were young, they did do prayers with their kids, and right now their kids aren't following God, and so they're broken for that. I just wanted to encourage you today that it's still in their heart. Eric still remembers his prayer. I still remember my prayer. I just want to encourage you that if you did that with your kid, it's still in their heart today, that God is still working in their life, and it is so meaningful. You may not see it today, but years to come, it will flourish and come out. So.
Also, and if I could just sneak this in, that was amazing. Like, it was perfect what you said. But I also want to also mention to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Like, don't do something that your kid is not interested in, that you're interested in, right? Find something that, as you were saying, the mom did the football thing because that's what the child was interested in.
Yes.
Do something that you know is going to capture them, because if you do that, if you meet them in the place that they are, they won't forget that.
That's right. That's right. Another thing we do at birthdays is when we have a birthday dinner, everybody goes around the table and says at least one thing they really love about the birthday person. And usually it turns into 2 or 3 or 4 things. But how uplifting is it for that birthday person to hear all of that life spoken into them and over them? So.
And it might start with some of the kids rolling their eyes. Oh, mom wants to do that again. But then once it actually starts, usually the eyes turn to tears. Stop rolling and start crying because it really touches them.
Because it means something, Well, you guys, thank you. This was so good, so good. Well, stay with us. There is more A Better Us to come.
Hey friends, Ron and Ann here. We're so glad you're with us at A Better Us, and we pray your marriage is blessed as you take this in.
Be sure and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and enjoy this video. Well, thanks for joining us today. Good marriages don't just happen, they're built. And that means work, but it's probably the most worthwhile, fulfilling work we can do.
Absolutely. You guys had a great segment in the workshop talking about the best kind of home improvement.
Right. And we were handed some pretty good tools from Dr. Johnny Parker, who told us how to avoid drift in marriage. That word drift is pretty descriptive, as it implies basically doing nothing and letting the currents of life just slowly move you apart.
But it doesn't have to be that way when we realize that what we really need is an anchor. And the best anchor we can have is found in a personal, individual relationship with God.
Which is exactly what Jesus came to do through his death and resurrection. And when we come to him and receive his forgiveness and his strength for our life, the Bible calls it a sure and steadfast anchor for the soul.
I like that.
And having that connection is the best thing you can ever do for your marriage.
We often say closer to God means closer to each other. And we've found that to be so true. If you'd like to talk with someone about that, or simply have someone pray for you, our prayer line is on the screen. And you can also visit our website at abetterus.tv for some great marriage resources.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And remember, with God, there is always hope to become a better us. Hey friends, we really hope you're enjoying the marriage conversations here with A Better Us on our YouTube channel.
We have hundreds of more helpful marriage videos designed to give you hope and tools to make your marriage better.
You can see just a few options we think you might like here and here.
Enjoy! Oh, and make sure you subscribe by clicking here so you don't miss out on all the great marriage help we have coming your way soon.